In 1912, a boy was born in the small town of Wörsitz, in what was then the German Empire. His name was Wernher von Braun. His family was aristocratic. His mother, a talented amateur astronomer, gave him a telescope when he was confirmed. The boy looked up at the moon through that telescope, and something changed inside him. He did not just see a distant rock. He saw a destination. He later wrote, "The moon was not a challenge to be feared. It was a promise." Germany after World War I was a nation in crisis. The Treaty of Versailles had stripped it of its military power, its colonies, and its pride. Rockets, specifically long-range artillery rockets, were forbidden. But a young engineer named Hermann Oberth was publishing books about spaceflight, arguing that rockets could one day reach the moon. Oberth's ideas were dismissed by most scientists as fantasy. But Wernher von Braun read Oberth's work as a teenager and became obsessed. Von Braun did not excel in mathematics at first. He failed his early exams. But his determination was unusual. He transferred to a boarding school on the island of Spiekeroog, where he studied late into the night. By age 20, he had graduated and was admitted to the Berlin Institute of Technology. He joined the German rocket club, Verein für Raumschifffahrt, where amateur enthusiasts built and tested small liquid-fueled rockets. These were dangerous experiments. Rockets exploded. Fires started. But von Braun was not afraid. He saw each failure as a step forward. Liquid-fueled rockets were new. Unlike solid rockets, which burned until the fuel was gone, liquid rockets could be throttled, stopped, and restarted. The basic principle was simple: mix a fuel with an oxidizer, ignite them in a combustion chamber, and expel the hot gas through a nozzle. The challenge was controlling the flow. Too little pressure, and the rocket would not lift. Too much pressure, and the engine would explode. In 1932, von Braun was still a university student when the German army noticed his work. Captain Walter Dornberger, an artillery officer, was looking for ways to circumvent the Treaty of Versailles. Rockets were not mentioned in the treaty. Dornberger offered von Braun a job: develop rockets for the military. Von Braun hesitated. His dream was space. But the army had money, facilities, and equipment. The rocket club had nothing. He accepted. The boy who looked at the moon through his mother's telescope was now a young man building weapons for the German army. He told himself that the rockets were just a means to an end. The military wanted missiles. He wanted spaceships. He believed that one could lead to the other. He was not wrong. But he would soon learn that every choice has a price. And some prices are too high. The early 1930s in Germany were a strange time. Economic depression had left millions unemployed. Political violence was rising. The Nazi Party was gaining power. But inside a small army testing ground near Berlin, a group of young engineers was not thinking about politics. They were thinking about fire, pressure, and thrust. They were building rockets. And they were convinced that these machines would one day carry humans beyond Earth. In 1932, when von Braun began working for the German army, rocket research was still primitive. The army had given him a small grant and a patch of land at Kummersdorf, about 25 kilometers south of Berlin. There was no proper building. No safety equipment. No experienced team. Von Braun worked with a handful of assistants, often sleeping on a cot next to the test stand. Rockets exploded regularly. Once, a motor blew up and threw a piece of metal through the roof. Von Braun was unharmed. He walked outside, looked at the damage, and said, "Well, we know what not to do next time." By 1934, von Braun had earned his doctorate in physics from the University of Berlin. His thesis was titled "Construction, Theoretical, and Experimental Contributions to the Problem of the Liquid Propellant Rocket." It was classified by the Army. Only a few people ever read it. But inside that document was the foundation of modern rocketry. He had solved problems of combustion instability, nozzle design, and fuel injection that had stopped other researchers. The engine von Braun developed at Kummersdorf used alcohol and liquid oxygen. Alcohol was a stable fuel. Liquid oxygen was cold, -183 degrees Celsius, but it burned hot. The mixture ratio had to be precise. Too much oxygen, and the engine would burn through the metal walls. Too much alcohol, and the thrust would drop. Von Braun designed a regeneratively cooled engine. The fuel, alcohol, flowed through channels around the combustion chamber before being injected. This cooled the walls while preheating the fuel. It was a simple idea, but it worked. In December 1934, von Braun's team successfully launched 2 rockets, designated A2, that reached altitudes of 2.2 kilometers. This was impressive for the time, but von Braun was already thinking bigger. He designed the A3, A4, and A5 in sequence. Each was larger. Each had more range. The A4 would eventually become famous under a different name, the WWII. It was designed to carry a 1-ton warhead over 300 kilometers. No weapon like it had ever existed. The army was thrilled. The Nazi regime, which had taken full control of Germany in 1933, was watching closely. Adolf Hitler had little interest in rockets at first. He preferred tanks and airplanes. But the generals saw potential. A rocket that could reach London without a pilot. Without warning? That was worth funding. Von Braun received more money, more staff, and a new facility. He was no longer a student playing with fire. He was building the world's first ballistic missile. And he told himself, still, that it was all for space. In 1936, the German army decided that Kummersdorf was too small. The rockets were getting larger. The tests were getting louder. And secrecy was becoming impossible. A new facility was needed, remote, isolated, and hidden from spy planes. The army chose a forested area on the Baltic coast, near the village of Peenemünde. It was a quiet place. Fishermen lived there. Birds nested in the trees. Within a few years, it would become the most advanced rocket development site in the world. And it would change the nature of warfare forever. Adolf Hitler initially dismissed rockets as expensive artillery. But the generals persisted. In 1937, von Braun was appointed technical director of the Peenemünde Army Research Center. He was only 25 years old. Hundreds of engineers, technicians, and workers reported to him. The facility grew rapidly. Wind tunnels, test stands, assembly halls, and a power plant were built. By 1939, the year World War II began, Peenemünde employed more than 2,000 people. The rocket they were building, the A4, was enormous by the standards of the time. It stood 14 meters tall. It weighed 12.5 tons when fully fueled. Its engine produced 25 tons of thrust. No rocket had ever been built on this scale. The technical challenges were immense. The engine had to burn reliably for more than 60 seconds. The guidance system had to keep the rocket stable at supersonic speeds. The nose cone had to survive re-entry temperatures. Von Braun and his team solved these problems one by one. But each solution took time. And time was running out. The A4 was powered by a 75% ethanol and 25% water mixture, combined with liquid oxygen. The water reduced combustion temperature and allowed the engine to run longer. The fuel was injected through 18 nozzles into the combustion chamber. The exhaust passed through a graphite vane system at the nozzle exit. These carbon vanes could be moved by electric motors, deflecting the exhaust to steer the rocket. This was an early form of thrust vector control. The guidance system used 2 gyroscopes. One measured pitch and yaw. The other measured roll. A mechanical analog computer processed the gyroscope data and sent commands to the steering vanes. This system was primitive by modern standards but revolutionary for 1942. The rocket could not adjust its trajectory after engine cutoff. It followed a ballistic arc, like a cannonball, from launch to impact. Accuracy was limited. But for a weapon that traveled 300 kilometers, hitting a city was enough. On October 3, 1942, the 4th A4 test flight succeeded. The rocket reached 85 kilometers altitude and traveled 190 kilometers downrange. It was the first human-made object to cross the Kármán line, the boundary of space. Von Braun's team celebrated. They had built the world's first ballistic missile. They had also built the world's first spacecraft. The same technology would kill thousands. And the same technology would later carry humans to the moon. Hitler finally saw the A for demonstration in July 1943. He was impressed. He ordered mass production immediately. The rocket was renamed WWII, Vergeltungswaffe, or Vengeance Weapon 2. Its purpose was revenge. Germany was losing the war. Bombings had destroyed German cities. The WWII could not change the outcome, but it could terrorize civilians in London and Antwerp. Von Braun watched his creation become a weapon of terror. He later claimed he had always wanted spaceflight, not war. But the rocket did not care about intentions. It only followed its trajectory. Rockets do not build themselves. They require factories. Factories require workers. And in Nazi Germany, workers were not always volunteers. By 1943, the war had drained the German workforce. Millions of men were fighting at the front. Those who remained were needed for essential industries. There was only one source of labor left: prisoners. Concentration camps had been operating since 1933. But now, they became part of the industrial war machine. The WWII would not have been built without them. This is the part of the story that von Braun tried to hide. After Hitler ordered mass production of the WWII in July 1943, Peenemünde became a bombing target. The British Royal Air Force attacked on the night of August 17 to 18, 1943. Operation Hydra killed more than 700 people at Peenemünde, including several key engineers. The facility was damaged. The Germans decided to move production underground. A tunnel system near the town of Nordhausen, in central Germany, was selected. The tunnels were originally built for fuel storage. They were cold, damp, and dark. They became the Mittelwerk factory. The labor force came from a nearby concentration camp called Mittelbaudora, a subcamp of Buchenwald. Prisoners were brought from other camps. They were political prisoners, Soviet prisoners of war, Jews, Roma, and others deemed enemies of the Nazi regime. They worked 12-hour shifts. Sometimes longer. There was no safety equipment. The tunnels had no ventilation. Toxic fumes from rocket propellants filled the air. Accidents were common. A single explosion could kill dozens of workers. But the SS guards did not stop production. The prisoners built WWII rockets under brutal conditions. They assembled the fuselage sections. They installed the guidance systems. They mounted the engines. The work required precision. A misaligned component could cause the rocket to fail. But the prisoners were starving. The daily food ration was bread, thin soup, and sometimes a piece of sausage. That was not enough for men doing heavy labor. Many collapsed at their workstations. Those who could not continue were sent back to the camp. Many never returned. The death toll at Mittelbaudora is documented. Historians estimate that about 20,000 prisoners died at the camp and its subcamps. Some were executed. Some died of disease. Some were killed by Allied bombing raids. But most died from exhaustion, starvation, and the brutal conditions of the underground factory. More people died building the WWII than were killed by the WWII in combat. Approximately 10,000 civilians died from WWII attacks on London, Antwerp, and other cities. Approximately 20,000 prisoners died building them. Von Braun visited Mittelwerk several times. He later claimed he saw the conditions but could not change them. He said he was focused on technical problems. He said he did not know the scale of the suffering. Historians have debated these claims. What is known is that von Braun never protested. He never resigned. He never spoke out. He continued to work. The rockets mattered more to him than the hands that built them. The WWII was an engineering triumph. It was also a human tragedy. The same blueprints that described combustion chambers and guidance gyroscopes were stained with the labor of enslaved people. Von Braun would spend the rest of his life trying to separate himself from this history. He would argue that he was a scientist, not a politician. He would say that he had no power over the SS. But the blood on the blueprints did not wash away. It followed him across the ocean. And it still stains his legacy today. By early 1945, Germany was collapsing. The Soviet army was advancing from the east. The American and British armies were advancing from the west. Peenemünde was in the path of the Soviet advance. Mittelwerk was in the path of the American advance. Wernher von Braun knew that the war was lost. He also knew that he possessed knowledge that both sides would want. Rocket technology was valuable. And von Braun decided that he would not let the Soviets capture him. He made a choice. He would cross the line to the west. In January 1945, von Braun gathered his closest colleagues. They discussed what to do. The SS had orders to prevent key personnel from falling into enemy hands. Some scientists had been killed to keep secrets from reaching the Allies. Von Braun did not want to share that fate. He ordered his team to prepare for evacuation. Documents, drawings, and rocket components were packed onto trucks. The scientists followed in their own vehicles. They traveled south, away from the advancing Soviet army, toward the Bavarian Alps. The journey was dangerous. Roads were clogged with refugees. Allied aircraft attacked any moving vehicle. The SS was searching for deserters. Von Braun was briefly arrested by the SS in early April. He was accused of not taking the war seriously. He was held for 2 weeks. His release was arranged by Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister. Von Braun returned to his team. They continued moving south. They ended up in a small ski resort town called Oberammergau. There, they waited. Von Braun knew that his technical knowledge was his only bargaining chip. He had spent 12 years developing liquid-fueled rockets. He had solved problems of combustion, guidance, and materials that no other nation had solved. The WWII was not perfect. But it was far ahead of anything the Allies had built. American rockets at the time were small, unreliable, and had limited range. Von Braun's team had blueprints for larger rockets, including the A9 and A10, designs for intercontinental ballistic missiles and even orbital vehicles. He also understood that the Cold War was already beginning. The alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union was temporary. Both nations would soon compete for German scientists. Von Braun wanted to go to America. He believed that America had the resources, the freedom, and the ambition to pursue spaceflight. The Soviets, he believed, would only use rockets for war. He was not entirely wrong. But his choice was also self-interested. He wanted to continue his work. He could not do that in a prison cell or a Soviet labor camp. On May 2, 1945, von Braun's brother Magnus rode a bicycle toward American lines. He found a private from the 44th Infantry Division. He said in broken English, "My name is Magnus von Braun. My brother invented the WWII. We want to surrender." The Americans were skeptical at first. But they took Magnus to their commanding officer. Within hours, Wernher von Braun and his core team of about 500 scientists and engineers surrendered to the American army. They were interrogated. Their documents were seized. And they were flown to the United States. The war was over. Europe was in ruins. Millions were dead. Von Braun had survived. He had crossed from the losing side to the winning side. He would never return to Germany to live. He told himself that he had done what was necessary. He told himself that the past was the past. But the crossing was not an ending. It was a beginning. A new chapter in America. A new chance. And a new set of questions that would follow him for the rest of his life. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. But a different war was already beginning. The United States and the Soviet Union had been allies against Hitler. Now they became rivals. Both nations understood that German science, especially rocket science, could determine the balance of power in the coming decades. The Americans had captured von Braun and his team. But capturing them was only the first step. The next step was bringing them home. Legally, this was a problem. The United States had strict laws against admitting Nazi Party members or war criminals. Von Braun was both. a solution was found. It was called Operation Paperclip. President Harry Truman authorized Operation Paperclip in August 1945. The official name was Overcast. The goal was simple: identify German scientists, engineers, and technicians whose knowledge was valuable to American national security. Then bring them to the United States. Their Nazi pasts would be investigated. But the investigations were not thorough. Many files were altered. Many crimes were overlooked. The need for technical expertise outweighed the need for justice. Von Braun was processed through Fort Strong in Boston. He was interrogated repeatedly. American intelligence officers asked about the WWII, about future rocket designs, about German military plans. They did not ask detailed questions about Mittelbau-Dora. They did not ask about the 20,000 prisoners who died building his rockets. If they had asked, von Braun had prepared answers. He would say that he was a scientist, not a politician. He would say that he had no authority over the SS. He would say that he did not know the full extent of the atrocities. These answers were accepted. Operation Paperclip brought more than 1,600 German scientists to the United States. They worked at various military installations. The largest group was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, and later to the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Von Braun was the technical director of this group. They were given the title civilian employees of the United States Army. They were not prisoners. They were paid salaries. They brought their families. They learned English. They became American citizens over time. The first task was to reassemble and test V-2 rockets. The Americans had captured dozens of complete V-2s from the Mittelwerk factory. These were shipped to the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico. Between 1946 and 1952, the von Braun team launched more than 60 V-2 rockets. Some carried scientific instruments. Some carried fruit flies, the first living creatures to reach space and return alive. These tests provided invaluable data on high-altitude flight, re-entry, and rocket performance. The United States was learning from German technology. And von Braun was proving his worth, but the moral question never disappeared. Critics inside the American government objected to bringing former Nazis to the United States. Some Paperclip scientists had been members of the SS. Some had been involved in human experiments. Von Braun had joined the Nazi Party in 1937. He had been awarded the rank of Sturmbannführer, Major, in the SS in 1940. He later claimed these were necessary for his work. He claimed he had no choice. Many historians dispute this. There were German scientists who refused to join the party. They lost their jobs. But they also kept their consciences. Operation Paperclip was a compromise between morality and necessity. The United States chose necessity. Von Braun and his team were given new names, new jobs, and new lives. The past was not erased. It was simply ignored. For a nation entering the Cold War, German rocket expertise was too valuable to leave behind. For von Braun, America was a second chance. He would use it well. But the paperclip that held his file together also held together a story that was not complete. The blood was still there. It was just hidden between the pages. For the first few years in America, von Braun lived in a former army barracks in Fort Bliss, Texas. The conditions were modest. His team was isolated. The military kept them on a short leash. They could not leave the base without permission. Their mail was read. Their phones were monitored. They were technically prisoners of war, even if they called themselves guests. But von Braun did not complain. He had a new country, a new laboratory, and a new purpose. He was no longer building weapons for a dictator. He was building rockets for the free world. Or so he told himself. In 1950, von Braun and his team were moved to Huntsville, Alabama. The Redstone Arsenal became their permanent home. Huntsville was a small cotton town before the war. Within a decade, it would become known as the Rocket City. Von Braun was appointed technical director of the Army's Guided Missile Development Program. His first major project was the Redstone rocket, a direct descendant of the WWII. The Redstone was a medium-range ballistic missile. It could carry a nuclear warhead. It was designed to deter Soviet aggression. The Redstone worked. It flew successfully in 1953. Von Braun then developed the Jupiter missile, which had twice the range. But the Army was not the only player in American rocketry. The Air Force had its own missile programs. The Navy had its own. Competition was fierce. Von Braun advocated for larger rockets, orbital vehicles, and space exploration. The military was interested in missiles, not moons. Von Braun was frustrated. He began writing articles and appearing on television. He wanted the American public to dream of space. He became famous. The Redstone rocket was 21 meters tall. It produced about 75,000 pounds of thrust. Its engine burned alcohol and liquid oxygen, the same propellants as the WWII. But the guidance system was more advanced. The Redstone could hit a target within a few hundred meters from a range of 300 kilometers. This was accurate enough for a nuclear warhead. The Redstone was deployed in West Germany in the late 1950s. It was the first American ballistic missile to carry a live nuclear weapon on alert duty. But von Braun had bigger ambitions. He wanted to launch a satellite. In 1954, he proposed using a modified Redstone rocket with additional stages. The project was called Orbiter. The military rejected it. The Eisenhower administration wanted to separate military and civilian space programs. A new agency, the Naval Research Laboratory, was given the satellite mission. They used a rocket called Vanguard. It was smaller, cheaper, and less capable than von Braun's design. Von Braun watched from the sidelines. He was not happy. On October 4, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1. It was the first artificial satellite. The world was shocked. America was humiliated. The Vanguard rocket was rushed to launch. On December 6, 1957, it rose a few feet off the pad, then fell back and exploded. The press called it Flopnik and Kaputnik. Von Braun was called before officials. They asked if he could launch a satellite. He said he could do it in 90 days. He was given permission. On January 31, 1958, a Jupiter C rocket, a modified Redstone with upper stages, lifted off from Cape Canaveral. It carried Explorer 1, America's first satellite. The launch was successful. The satellite discovered the Van Allen radiation belts, a major scientific finding. Von Braun was a hero. His long climb had finally reached the top. The man who built the WWII for Hitler had now launched America's first satellite. The same technology that terrorized London now explored space. Von Braun did not see a contradiction. He saw continuity. Rockets were rockets. The direction they pointed, toward a city or toward the stars, was decided by others. He was just the builder. Or so he argued. The public accepted this. They called him a genius. They forgot the past. Von Braun was happy to help them forget. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy stood before Congress and declared that the United States would land a man on the moon before the decade ended. It was a bold promise. At the time, America had launched only one astronaut, Alan Shepard, on a 15-minute suborbital flight. No rocket existed that could reach the moon. No spacecraft existed that could land there. No one knew how to navigate across 380,000 kilometers of space. But von Braun listened to Kennedy's speech with confidence. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Kennedy's announcement was a response to Soviet successes. Yuri Gagarin had become the first human in space on April 12, 1961. The Cold War was at its peak. The moon became a battleground for prestige. Kennedy asked Vice President Lyndon Johnson to find a space goal that the United States could win. Johnson consulted NASA officials, including von Braun. Von Braun told Johnson that a lunar landing was possible. It would be expensive. It would be difficult. But the technology existed or could be developed. Johnson agreed. The Apollo program was born. Von Braun was placed in charge of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. His mission was clear: build the rocket that would send astronauts to the moon. Not a modified missile. Not a scaled-up WWII. Something entirely new. Something massive. The rocket would need to lift more than 45 tons to the moon. No rocket had ever lifted more than a few tons to Earth orbit. The challenge was enormous. Von Braun assembled his team. They worked 7 days a week. They called it the Saturn V. The Saturn V remains the most powerful rocket ever successfully flown. It stood 111 meters tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty. It weighed 2.8 million kilograms when fully fueled. Its first stage, the SIC, produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust from 5 F1 engines. Each F1 engine burned kerosene and liquid oxygen. Each consumed 15 tons of propellant per second. The 5 engines together drained the entire first stage fuel tank in just 2 minutes and 42 seconds. The second stage, the SI, used 5 J2 engines burning liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Hydrogen is more efficient than kerosene but harder to handle. It must be kept at -253 degrees Celsius. The SI stage burned for about 6 minutes, pushing the vehicle nearly to orbit. The third stage, the SIVB, used a single J2 engine. It fired twice, first to reach Earth orbit, then again to send the Apollo spacecraft toward the moon. This maneuver was called the translunar injection. Von Braun's team solved thousands of problems. Combustion instability in the F1 engine caused early tests to explode. Engineers added baffles to the injector plate, a simple fix that took years to perfect. The hydrogen fuel system leaked. Technicians learned to seal every joint with extreme care. The guidance system had to be precise. A tiny error at launch would mean missing the moon entirely. Von Braun oversaw every major decision. He was not just an administrator. He was the architect. The first Saturn V launched on November 9, 1967. It carried Apollo 4, an uncrewed test. The flight was perfect. The second Saturn V launched Apollo 6. There were problems, but the rocket performed well enough. Then came Apollo 8, the first crewed flight to orbit the moon. Apollo 10, the dress rehearsal. And finally, Apollo 11. On July 16, 1969, a Saturn V lifted off from Kennedy Space Center. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. Von Braun watched from the control room. He later said, "I knew that all my dreams had come true." The Saturn V was Von Braun's masterpiece. It was the largest, most complex machine ever built by human hands. It succeeded on every single launch. 13 Saturn Vs flew between 1967 and 1973. None ever failed. The rocket that carried Armstrong to the moon was the same technology that had once carried the WWII to London. But the destination was different. Von Braun had spent a lifetime arguing that rockets could be used for exploration, not just war. With the Saturn V, he proved it. The boy who looked at the moon through his mother's telescope had finally sent others there. Wernher von Braun achieved everything he had ever wanted. He built the rocket that took humans to the moon. He became a national hero in America. He appeared on television, wrote books, and received awards. Children admired him. Presidents consulted him. He was called a genius, a visionary, the father of spaceflight. But not everyone forgot. The questions that followed him from Germany never disappeared. They only grew quieter. And after his death, they grew louder again. The reckoning would come. Not in a courtroom, but in history. After Apollo, von Braun's role at NASA diminished. The agency shifted focus to the space shuttle. Von Braun disagreed with the design decisions. He believed in reusable spacecraft but wanted a different approach. His influence waned. In 1972, he left NASA and joined Fairchild Industries, a private aerospace company. He moved to Washington, D.C. His health began to decline. He was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 1973. The disease spread quickly. On June 16, 1977, Wernher von Braun died in Alexandria, Virginia. He was 65 years old. His funeral was attended by NASA officials, military officers, and former colleagues. He was buried in Alexandria. His tombstone is simple. It bears his name, his birth and death dates, and the words from Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God." No mention of the WWII. No mention of Mittelbau-Dora. No mention of the 20,000 prisoners who died building his rockets. The epitaph was chosen by his family. It reflects how von Braun wanted to be remembered. Not as a weapon maker. As a stargazer. The debate over von Braun's legacy has continued for decades. Historians have examined archives, interviewed survivors, and analyzed documents. The consensus is complex. Von Braun was not a war criminal in the legal sense. He was never charged with a crime. He was never tried. But he was complicit. He knew that prisoners were building his rockets. He visited Mittelwerk multiple times. He saw the conditions. He did nothing. He did not protest. He did not resign. He did not speak out after the war. He protected himself. Some argue that von Braun had no power. The SS controlled the camps. Any protest would have meant his own death. Others argue that silence is a choice. German scientists like Max Planck and Otto Hahn faced similar dangers but spoke against the regime. Von Braun did not. He joined the Nazi Party. He accepted SS rank. He prioritized his rockets over human lives. These are facts. They cannot be erased by the Saturn V's success. After his death, survivors of Mittelbau-Dora spoke out. They described the beatings, the hangings, the starvation. They described von Braun visiting the factory. They said he never looked at them. He looked only at the rockets. One survivor, Jean Michel, wrote a book about his experience. He said, "Von Braun was a genius. But he was also a man who saw us as tools. We were not human to him. We were hands that built his dreams." Wernher von Braun gave humanity the moon. He also gave the Nazis the WWII. Both statements are true. Both cannot be separated. His legacy is not one thing. It is two things at once. A rocket that killed civilians in London. A rocket that carried astronauts to Tranquility Base. A man who watched prisoners die in tunnels. A man who watched Armstrong step onto the lunar surface. History does not offer easy judgments. It offers facts. And the facts are these: von Braun was brilliant. Von Braun was flawed. Von Braun was complicit. Von Braun was essential. The heavens declare the glory of his work. The earth remembers the cost.
Write your questions in the comments. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for upcoming episodes of the documentary series. New documentaries are released every Wednesday and Friday on this channel.